Well, hello everybody. Hopefully you can see and hear me quite clearly. If you can, just give me a yes or no in the chat, or indeed just raise that hand just at the bottom if you can. Oh, super. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to get cracking very shortly. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for prioritizing your time and investing your time and your well-being today in attending this webinar. As I said, we're going to get started very shortly. If you're just dropping in and joining us, then please take a few short moments now just to jump on that welcome poll, because what that's going to do is going to kind of fill us with a little bit of information and kind of get the juices flowing around this week's topic or today's topic. We're going to get started very shortly. Welcome, everybody. Give me a quick high five or a yes in the chat if you've got a nice big glass of water or a nice warm drink at hand on your desk, or indeed a water bottle. Good stuff. Stay nice and hydrated throughout the session today. Okay, I'm going to close that welcome poll very shortly, and then we'll jump into today's session. Okay. So I'll just give you a few more moments with that welcome poll. We currently have 55 attendants and participants, and that number is increasing as I speak, and people dropping in at the moment. So thank you so much again. We're going to get started in today's session. So first of all, thank you again so much for prioritizing some of your time today and joining myself and Dr. Marcelle Crinean for your strategize your sleep to increase productivity. Welcome to today's session. My name is Grant Payne. I'm the lead Wellbeing Coach here at Wellbeing People, where we have a wonderful mission to really empower as many people as possible to live their very best lives, to live your very best life. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today, to talk about some of one of the really key components that underpin good health and good function, which is, of course, sleep. Now, just before I introduce Marcelle to everybody, just a few key things and messages around housekeeping. Now, neither myself or Marcelle can see or hear you, so we absolutely actively encourage you to interact with us as best as you can. So if you do have a specific question that you really want to ask us today, then use the tab at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A, and you can drop a specific question in there. Marcelle and myself will be keeping an eye on those questions as we move through the session today, and hopefully we'll answer some of those questions. Also, indeed, you can use that chat function, that comments section, to really answer some of the questions that myself and Marcelle are going to be posing today, but also to share your thoughts, your opinions, your ideas around the topic that we're going to be discussing today. Today's session will be no longer than 60 minutes. We're going to aim to finish between 45 and 60 minutes today to see how we get on, just so that you're aware. And also, today's session is going to be recorded. We are recording this session, so if you do happen to need to jump off a couple of minutes early to go and attend to another meeting or to do something else, if you do need to jump off, the meeting will be recorded and you will be able to gain access to this recording. So welcome to the quarterly webinar today. I'd just like to take a few short moments now to introduce Marcelle. Marcelle, are you there?
I am here. Hello.
There she is. There she is. Okay, Marcelle, now I want to make sure that I get this correct. Marcelle is a clinical hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, and mind body nutrition coach. And you've developed a number of services and programs designed. See, notice I'm reading this, right? So
I see that. Well done.
No, yeah, win already. Designed around stress, resilience, sleep, work-life balance, and holistic well-being, really with dual purposes of preventing, future health issues like mental and physical, and also creating that culture of well-being. And most recently, Marcelle, you created an online course, haven't you, that's titled Say Goodnight to Insomnia, and you've launched a brand of natural sleep aids as well. So, cool, crumbs, that's out of the way, isn't it? That's
it's exhausting.
That is exhausting. So, did I miss anything there, Marcelle?
No, I think you've got it all.
Did I? Good stuff, good stuff. Now, thank you so much for sharing your time as well, Marcelle, today. Now, obviously, there's a number of people that are attending this session today, and they're attending. They've already got a motivation because they're here, they're listening, they're watching at this time. But what if you could ask them one question right now? I guess is my thought. What question would you ask them, or could you ask them right now at the start of the webinar?
So right now at the start, given the answers that were on the poll, the entrance poll, I kind of made a note before you shut it. So 97% of people here want tips to either manage their own sleep, tips to get them starting managing their own sleep, or tips to help others, manage their sleep, which was like 48%. And a third kind of are interested in increasing productivity. But that said, a third also say they're getting less than 6 hours sleep a night. So I would be really interested to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is low and 10 is high, how satisfied are you with your sleep? That would be really, the numbers are coming. I love that. Yes. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is low, 10 is high, how satisfied are you with your sleep? Gosh.
You put me on. I love the reflections. Look at these reflections coming in. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. This is great. So there's a few 1s, there's a few 7s. I think I saw they're flashing past, and my brain is, not as young as it used to be, so I can't catch the numbers that quickly. But it's interesting, right? There's some around the sort of 4, 5s. When I drop off and you do your bits, I might just kind of calculate the average of those, because it would be useful to know. So thank you for sharing those, everybody.
No, thank you for that. I just let everybody know kind of, the plan of this session today is of course to meet you and to really kind of absorb some of your wisdom and knowledge and insight that you have and experience that you have, Marcelle, today, and to share some of those strategies that we were speaking about. But also to highlight the problem. That's what I'm going to do for the next 10 minutes or so here. Just share with you guys a slide deck, just to highlight the problem. We'll talk about that, and then we'll bring, Marcelle, if it's okay with you, we'll bring you back on.
Yeah.
And we can dive into that kind of insight.
I'll jump off.
Super. Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you everybody for really engaging in that. We absolutely encourage you to utilize this time to be as reflective as you possibly can. So I've got a PowerPoint, just a little presentation, a few slides to share with everybody. Oopsie daisy, that's not the right one. There it is. Okay. Okay, let me draw that chat function down. There it is. Give me a thumbs up. Can you see that slide? I always get concerned with IT. Can everyone see the slides? Nice one. I always feel like sometimes if I push a button, the whole world's going to implode when it comes to IT, but that's just me. Hey. Okay, so welcome everybody. And as we said, what we've got today is a really interesting webinar to really highlight, provide some insight into sleep health for you. Now, as I said, today is a wonderful opportunity to discover ways to help really and promote and empower you to live your very best life. So it's really worth remembering throughout this session that your best life and my best life will always be different. So throughout this webinar, I know that Marcelle and myself will always encourage you to take what's helpful from this webinar today, challenge what doesn't seem kind of right to you, question as much as you can, and ask questions as much as you can. We have a wonderful expert in Marcelle today to bounce ideas and questions off. And always look for that really one action, that one thing that resonates with you that you might decide, okay, well, that's a really interesting experiment that I might decide to run with. Today, we're going to be focusing on understanding the sleep problem. I'm going to share some information about the problem of sleep for individuals and organizations. We're then going to invite Marcelle back on, and we're going to spend most of the session really talking about some of these strategies and ideas and experiments and tools that Marcelle is going to share with everybody around how we can increase our awareness around sleep and our productivity when it comes to sleep, both as individuals and in organizations. And of course, what we're going to do, and we're going to top off and finish off at the end of this session, we're going to encourage you to take a step forward, and we're going to give you a bit of a call to action today to really take those first steps towards reform and sleep reform in the workplace. As always, we really encourage self-reflection and the opportunity to reflect. So I'm going to ask you a very simple question here. What would you like to take from today's session? Please drop your thoughts and your desires and your wants. Drop them into that chat function if you can. What is it exactly that you would like to take away from today's session? Pop it in that chat function. Marcelle is going to keep her eye on that chat function, and hopefully we're going to provide some sort of solutions to some of these desires and wants that you're after. And again, keep dropping them in, keep being as active and interactive as you possibly can. And again, just ensure that on that kind of drop-down function, your answers can be anonymous. So if you want your answers only to be seen by myself and Marcelle, you can just ensure that that drop-down just reads to host and panelists. If you want your answer to be shared with everybody, we can create that community in there. You can ensure that just that drop-down reads to everybody. So there's loads and loads of answers coming in here. So thank you so much for your reflections. Hopefully Marcelle's keeping an eye on those, because there's plenty of them. Deepest sleep, sleep right through the night. Just the opportunity, someone's saying just the opportunity actually to pay attention to their sleep is what they really want from this session, which is great. Okay, super. And I have a second question here for everybody. Give me a yes or no in the chat. Do you feel you currently get enough sleep? Do you feel that you currently receive enough sleep or get enough sleep for you? Good stuff. And we're going to continue with lots of these reflections as we move through the session today. Okay, so how common are sleep problems? Again, I'm going to bounce through this because I really want to kind of bring Marcelle back in and get Marcelle involved as quickly as we can. So as you know, well, for many of us, I guess putting forward the business case for a good sleep it seems pretty straightforward, right? You know, as a society, we sleep less than we used to, and less than we should, perhaps. And although the optimum amount varies, of course, from person to person, most of us need between 7 and 9 hours sleep each night. In fact, 4 in 10 people, that's 40%, don't get enough sleep. We all have our own kind of unique patterns and habits and problems, of course, when it comes to sleep. Perhaps for some of us, we feel like we don't get enough sleep, and some of you have kind of highlighted that. Perhaps some of you feel you get too much sleep. Perhaps some of us struggle with the quality of a sleep rather than the quantity or duration of a sleep. Now, when sleep problems kind of occur very frequently, or they begin to kind of affect our day-to-day life, this may be a sign or a symptom that you're suffering more from kind of sleep-related or ill health sleep-related conditions, such as insomnia or other kind of sleep-related conditions. And this, of course, can be a very negative and have a very negative effect on both our physical and our mental health. But how common are the problems when it comes to our sleep? Now, here's some statistics that we've dug up for you, and we're going to share with you. As you can see, 36% of adults struggle to get to sleep in the last week on a weekly basis. Nearly half of the UK have trouble falling asleep. Does that resonate with anyone? Does anyone here, give me a high five, does anyone have trouble falling asleep as soon as they go to bed? You kind of twisting and turning, is that kind of you, or do you fall asleep straight away? You know, 1 in 3 people in the UK are affected by insomnia, and perhaps Marcelle may well touch on a little bit more about understanding what that means, what it is. And 1 in 5 suffer poor night's sleep most nights, representing the second most common health complaint after pain. Now, interestingly, as you can see up on your screen, I've popped up a little map here, and this map shows research around insomnia medication kind of prescriptions in the UK. And the map shows kind of the highest kind of CCGs or clinical commissions groups or NHS services in England that are doing the prescribing when it comes to insomnia medications and prescriptions. Now, the darker red areas show, the CCGs that prescribe a higher than average amount of insomnia medication, with the lighter areas representing those with lower rates as well. So it gives us a very clear idea here of how common these problems with sleep are to us in the UK. Okay, so what's the impact for the individual? Now, it's really important that we reflect around how sleep does impact on us as individuals. So the challenge as well is also for employers and perhaps possibly line managers as well, to be able to understand and recognize the consequences of poor sleep health and how that impacts, of course, productivity and performance, particularly when it might be a kind of a health and safety issue that puts kind of colleagues or members of the public at risk. Now, knowing what to look for, of course, is really important. So I'm going to encourage you now just to pause again and just take a moment to reflect. How would Marcelle know, how would I know if you've had a poor night's sleep? Take a moment to pause and identify perhaps some of your behaviors, your signs and symptoms. How do you know, and how would someone else know if you've had a poor night's sleep? What are some of your signs and symptoms? Grumpy, does that resonate with anyone else? Waking up tired, brain fog, I love that phrase. Well, I love it. I think it's a really, really kind of a useful phrase to reflect around. Grumpy, irritable, absolutely. And of course, self-awareness is that first step, isn't it? Understanding our self-awareness, raising awareness is that first step to any change that we want to make. And understanding some of our own signs and symptoms, of course, will raise that awareness, or help us raise awareness around other signs and symptoms that perhaps others might exhibit as well. So if we put this into a kind of workplace setting, what might be signs of poor sleep quality to the workplace, to the workforce even? And then we can start to reflect around these sorts of things. You know, many of you have highlighted here perhaps foggy thinking, poor mood, you know, poor cognitive ability, the ability to concentrate, you know, is challenging for us. And perhaps this one resonates with many of us. Perhaps we seek out those chemical fixes and we increase our intake of caffeine and energy drinks just to kind of keep us treading water throughout our day. We get an increase in sickness absence, especially within the workplace, and it is impacted by poor sleep health, inability to make necessary adjustments and adapt to change it as well. And all of this, of course, contributes to a reduction in performance and a deterioration in our performance. Okay, so what about the organisation then? What's the impact of the organisation? Now, not getting enough sleep, of course, is likely to affect our performance at work. We've just been discussing this, and evidence shows that sleep matters, of course, not just to us as individuals, but it also matters to businesses, it also matters to organisations and so on and so forth. Now, poor sleep leads to poor interpersonal interactions and dynamics, and poor customer service, mistakes and accidents and that sort of jazz. And as a result, that sleep deprivation is estimated to cost the UK economy over 30 billion a year, almost the equivalent to 2% GDP. And also, again, some more statistics here. 200,000 working days are lost in the UK each year due to insufficient sleep. Working night shifts has about 25 to 30% higher risk of injury than working day shifts, and a lack of sleep exacts a toll on perception and judgment in the workplace. Its effects can be seen in reduced efficiency and productivity, errors and accidents. So I guess what we're saying here is to be very mindful of connecting the dots of how poor sleep quality, poor sleep health influences our performance and productivity, not just individually, but also in the bigger picture within the workplace and within the organisation. Okay, so we've spoken about how poor sleep kind of influences us as individuals and influences our organisational productivity. But what are the causes of sleep deprivation? So let me ask you guys, and again, I'm going to hand this back over to you, and you guys have been really, really wonderful with your interaction so far. Let me ask you this question. What are some of your causes of sleep deprivation? What are some of your causes of sleep deprivation to you, or sleep loss or low sleep quality for you? Wonderful. So people saying children. I noticed anxiety and worrying popping up there. Children, problem solved. Good. Trying to fit work in around things that are going on in the workplace. Someone saying a small bed as well. Lovely reflection. Then again, keep them coming. what are some of your causes of sleep deprivation for you? And again, raising our awareness, and virtually all of our, well, all of them, our wellbeing webinars and our workshops, the main purpose is to raise awareness initially around what's currently going on. What is our current wellbeing looking like for us? Okay, good. Keep them coming in. Now, they may well revolve around a few of these things: work-related stress, work-related causes, things like work-related stress, shift patterns, work in different time zones, of course, working relationships as well. Other things like changing in health and well-being, or changes in health and well-being, short-term perhaps, or long-term injury or illness. Mental health. Again, there's a very close relationship between sleep and mental health. Perhaps you've heard yourself say before, I'm really stressed out because I've had a really poor night's sleep, and I've had a poor night's sleep because I'm really stressed out. So living with that mental health problem can also, affect how well kind of we sleep, and poor sleep can have a really negative impact on mental health as well. Other changes in health, things like pregnancy and menopause, of course, contribute to that sleep deprivation. Things like personal changes as well, personal lifestyle factors, poor housing, financial problems that cause anxiety in us, bereavements, becoming new parents, personal lifestyle factors, divorce, separation, things like this. Sleep disorders, again, these include insomnia, breathing-related disorders as well, such as kind of sleep apnea as well. And these can have a significant impact on our health and well-being, but they can also be treated. And NHS Choices has lots of information about these and other conditions as well. Sleep hygiene is another one, perhaps, that you highlighted. And sleep hygiene is a kind of description, really. It's simply a description of the ideal conditions for a good night's sleep. So things like kind of not eating too late, taking regular exercises, helpful bedtime routines, turning off those devices, avoiding stimulants, those sorts of things, with sleep hygiene. And finally, we've got stress, one of the main causes of sleep deprivation and poor sleep quality. In many cases, actually, the cause of stress is outside of the workplace, but around a third of the cases, it's related to the workplace. Now, I've spoken about loads of stuff there, and I try to be as quick as I can, because I really want to bring in Marcelle. So, Marcelle, are you there?
I am. I'm just kind of monitoring the chat. There's so much stuff in here, which is really, really interesting. There's a lot that I'm probably not going to have time to cover, because some of these questions they're great questions, and I don't have enough time to give like a whole pile of context and to be able to answer everybody. One of the questions was, I've had insomnia for a really long time, so I'm looking to learn something new. So of course that set my mind into, oh my God, now there's pressure on me to tell her something that, that's new. But the thing obviously that stands out to me is there's a lot of anxiety here. There's a lot of stress here, a lot of stress related type things. And for me, stress is a biggie. Obviously I work in the mental health world. I work with people who come to me for anxiety, stress, depression, nighttime worrying, can't sleep, PTSD, all of those kinds of things, which tend to be, problems that we would associate with being in the mind. But of course, stress doesn't only manifest itself in the mind. Stress manifests itself in a whole pile of symptoms that you're seeing here, which might be physical, might be cognitive, or might be psychological, right? Stress has no boundaries. It affects us all, but in different ways. And I think we don't often appreciate that we're stressed. When we recognize that we're stressed, it's gone a really long way. We've already got what I call a full stress bucket. And the full stress bucket means we're not going to think clearly. This kind of goes back. I wasn't really going to go into that, but given some of the questions, I think it's really important to highlight that we kind of have two parts to our brain. We have this clever, thinking, intelligent brain, right? The part that allows us to solve problems, the part that helps us make good decisions. Because I've seen lots of people going, well, I stay up late to get some alone time. I'm late night texting. I'm looking at screens even though I know I shouldn't be doing it. Right? That's not an intelligent thinking brain doing it. Right? We know what's good for us. The question is whether we do what's good for us. And that realm belongs in the other part of our brain, which is this kind of emotional primitive brain, which really is primitive. We share it with other animals and it's geared towards survival. So that part of our brain is our kind of our fight flight part of our brain that takes over when it thinks there's a threat, right, to our survival. But that part of our brain isn't very good at distinguishing between a real threat and an imagined threat. So imagining that I've got to ask for a promotion tomorrow and I don't know how to do it, or imagining that, you know, there's a whole pile of work going to come in tomorrow, or imagining that I'm going to get home and the dishes aren't going to be done, whatever it might be, right? That feels just as real a threat to my brain as a saber-toothed tiger on my back. So anytime we think that something is a problem or a threat, our primitive brain thinks it's a threat to our survival, and it pops us into this fight-flight state. And when we're in this fight-flight state, our brain is releasing chemicals to help us fight the threats, which is why we get angry and irritable and grumpy. And I saw lots of those, and that's me. I'm a proper warrior. I will fight a threat until, you know, my last breath is taken. So I tend to be on that spectrum of I just get grumpy and tetchy and irritable. But for other people, they'll go into that flight mode where they'll worry incessantly. What if the threat gets me? What if I can't do it? What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't finish it? What if, right? And that tends to be our flight mode, our anxiety mode. And all of that kind of stuff fills up our stress buckets. But when our brain is in that fight flight state, it wants us to survive. It wants us to act fast by fighting or running. It doesn't want us wasting valuable time thinking strategically about the best way to run or the best route to take. So we actually lose access to that part of our brain that allows us to problem solve, think creatively, and actually do what we know is good for us. Okay, so that's why. So I'm hoping that answers a lot of the questions as to why that's happening, right? Why do you know it's, you know, you shouldn't be looking at your computer at 11 o'clock at night. You know, you shouldn't be late night texting. You know, you shouldn't be staying up late. You know, you should be prioritizing your sleep, but you don't do it. Why? Because the stress levels are so high that your brain has kicked you into that fight flight state. The third state obviously being freeze, which is that deer in the headlights, right? Something's coming at me. There's nothing I can do about the threats. It's going to get me. I'm just going to retreat and I'm going to bury my head in the sand and I'm going to really, really hope that it's not going to get me. And that's when we tend to procrastinate. We literally freeze, right? We go into that frozen state. So that's kind of why it's happening. But the flip side of that is you can't get away from stress. Like it's constant. Like you said, it's not only in the workplace. So for me, stress is one of those things that you've really got to manage. And you're right, there's a link between stress and mental health, because cortisol, which is our main stress hormone, is also our awake hormone. So the more stress you're creating, the more awake you're creating, which means you're not going to sleep. However, sleep is our biological mechanism for emptying our stress bucket. So the more you don't sleep, the more the stress comes up, the more awake you are, the less you sleep. And you end up in this vicious cycle. And it kind of doesn't really matter whether you've got high levels of stress or you're not sleeping. Those symptoms that everyone's mentioned, they're the same because it's a chicken and egg. So for me, stress is the main one to get under control for sure. A few people have mentioned medical type problems, which, you know, I'm a psychologist, not a medical doctor. If there's a medical reason, then that's really something to go see your GP about. You know, that's things like paralysis, restless legs, or any other kinds of physical symptom. That said, when you have a physical symptom, that can create worry that I'm not going to sleep well. So there is a link. You do still need to get the worry and the stress under control, because stress will lead to irritableness, anxiety, depression, longer term physical symptoms. I mean, you know, memory shutdown, can't solve problems. Somebody mentioned on the thing, you know, takes me twice as long to do anything. Well, of course it does, because you don't have your full memory, your full problem solving capacity. So actually prioritizing sleep, and a lot of us in the workplace, I mean, I worked for 20 years in the corporate world, so I understand the pressures that come with, oh my God, there's a deadline tomorrow, I'm going to have to deprioritize sleep in order to get the work done. But actually, that's actually making the problem worse. If you just prioritized sleep, you would be ready for the day tomorrow, full of energy, full working capacity, and you'd actually get the stuff done, because our productivity can be decreased by up to 40% when we've got stress and we don't sleep well. So you're losing half your working week by not sleeping and stressing. So if you just added 2 hours sleep, you would, you'd get the benefits. And actually, somebody's just said stress can be quite subtle. It's not always obvious. Kim, you're absolutely right. It's not always obvious because it lives in our subconscious brain. Stress is just dripping in and out, and then we manage it, right? We manage that heavy bucket, and we get used to managing the heavy buckets. So we don't notice when 1 or 2 drips go in, but then all of a sudden it's overflowing, and we wonder why. But stress is dripping in, and it's when you notice you're not sleeping, that is the first sign that your bucket is filling too quickly or has too much in it. So it is the first thing to address, really, because if you wait to notice it, it might be too late.
So being proactive with your sleep, you know, paying attention, actively paying attention to it constantly is a benefit for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting stress under control, important. Getting quality sleep, important. Somebody mentioned about quality. And I think that's a really important point to make, because obviously we've talked about the statistics, you know, 36% of people struggle to get a good night's sleep. You know, the World Health Organization recommend a certain number of hours of sleep. But actually, for me personally, the quantity of sleep is less important than the quality of sleep, because 10 hours of rubbish sleep
still rubbish sleep.
It's still rubbish sleep, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, if you so somebody's just popped a thing into sort of our chat function, but absolutely right. There's continual stress coming from all kinds of places, right? Your family, finances, the marketplace. COVID has caused no end of additional problems, because now people are worrying about job security, about money, about health. You know, and actually one of the biggest impacts has been lack of routine through COVID, because routine, we'll talk about this, but routine is actually one of the most important things you can do for your sleep. And we're all out of it. We're all out of routine. So yes, so getting stress under control is important. Getting quality sleep is important. On the poll, as I mentioned, I've just made a note here, 35%, a third of people, so actually the statistics you were talking about, are getting less than 6 hours sleep, and that is dangerous. Less than 6 hours sleep is not good. You know, anything, you do get short sleepers, people who are called short sleepers, who can function on less, and we can all function on less, but the question is whether that's healthy, right? Yeah. And somebody else mentioned, you know, about I convince myself that I'm having a bad night's sleep, and so I don't really know whether I've had a bad night's sleep, or I've just convinced myself I've had a bad night's sleep and therefore I feel tired. And that's true. It's because our brain can't tell the difference between a real threat and an imagined threat. So if I tell myself I've had a bad night's sleep, I think I haven't slept well. And there's lots of research that's been done by psychologists that say, you know, here's a group of people, we'll let them have 8 hours sleep, but we'll tell them they've had 4. And here's another group of people who only get 4 hours sleep, but we'll tell them they've had 8. And the people who've had 8 hours but have been told they had 4, oh my goodness, the mood changes, I'm so tired. But the people who had 4 but told they had 8, they feel great. So mind control is a massive thing. The conversations that you have in your head and what you tell yourself becomes part of your truth.
Yeah.
Okay. And we constantly say things like, I'm so stressed. Okay. And yeah, you are. And if you tell yourself you're stressed, you're going to be stressed. I'm so tired. Well, yes, if you tell yourself you're tired, you will be. Okay. And I'm not undermining it. I'm not trying to say that you're not tired and you're not stressed, but the more you say it, the more it becomes your reality, because your brain can't tell the difference between real and imagined.
How might someone then kind of perhaps subjectively rate their quality of sleep? How could they do that?
So quality sleep for me means that you are getting, quality sleep means you are getting to sleep relatively easy most nights. Okay. We all have bad night's sleep. We all have those nights where we know we've got something coming up tomorrow and I've got to wake up early, so we have broken sleep. Okay. That's actually normal. And I think it's about accepting that that's normal, and that we're designed to function on the odd night's poor sleep. Okay. But if on the whole you are getting to sleep relatively quickly, and that really means within 20 minutes of going to bed, you are staying asleep through the nights, and when you wake up in the morning you feel refreshed and ready to go, then you've had good quality sleep. Because the definition of insomnia is 3 or more nights a week where you either don't get to sleep quickly, wake up during the night, or sleep but don't feel refreshed.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say, every now and again, kind of I experience those kind of nocturnal awakenings, and I don't know about anyone else, perhaps this resonates with anyone else. So there's like a typical time, and for somebody like 2:30, I think mine's 2:37, whenever.
Yeah. Mine's 3. It's always 3, 10 to 3.
And yours is 10
to 3. We should have a little, I was going to say we should have a little text message chat, but that's not my intelligent thinking brain chatting. Yeah.
So when I do wake up then, and I do have those night kind of awakenings, well, what's the best step there? Because there's so much stuff that you hear and read and stuff like that.
There is. And do you know what? I am going to answer that, but I want to talk about 3 things first, that because for me that means you have you're not doing one of the 3 things that oh bless, so I didn't realize I had insomnia. Well, I mean, but don't get too hung up on the word, right? It's a word that just means I have trouble sleeping. It's when it becomes chronic, and it's when it becomes something that's so consuming that it consumes your life, right? It's started to affect your physical health, your mental health, your ability to work, your relationships. What we absolutely don't want is it tipping over into that. Okay. But yes, there are really 3 things that are the main things that affect sleep. Now, stress is part of one of those things. And whilst this is not a stress, this is not a stress call. This is not a call about stress. This is a call about sleep. One thing I would say is, if you are somebody who struggles to get to sleep because you have a lot of nighttime brain wanderings, which was one of the main things that came out on that thing. My mind just takes over, right? So then you lie in bed, and I would do and this is what I recommend on my insomnia course, and I recommend with my insomnia clients, is something that I call a worry journal. Or a brain dump, whatever you want to call it. But it's basically getting your thoughts out of your head where they are causing the problem and onto paper, because when you read them back to yourself, you're getting a different perspective. And actually, ultimately, everything's about getting a different perspective, right? So for me, a worry journal is take a bit of time every night to just brain dump the things that are worrying you. Okay. So it's not really a to-do list, but it could be. If your to-do list is something that's worrying you, then get that out as well. Yeah. And what happens is, when we're thinking about things, because we're thinking about things, I mustn't forget to do that, and I mustn't forget to do that, and I mustn't forget to do that. What we're really doing is repeating the same thing in our brain thousands of times, right? I mustn't do that. I mustn't forget. I must take the bins out. I must do that, and I must take the bins out. I mustn't forget to take the bins out, right? And so I start stressing about putting the bins out, and actually I'm really worried about taking the bins out. It's a thing that's worrying me, but it's just one thing. So when you get them out on paper, what seemed like 300 things that I had to do might actually in reality only be 10.
Yeah.
Okay? So I would brain dump all of the worries, put them onto paper, and then I do what's a traffic light system. Okay. And I look through my list and I go, right, okay, what's on this list that I can do absolutely nothing about before tomorrow? I just can't, right? I can't do anything about it. And actually, it might be something that I don't even need to worry about until next week. I would color code that red, okay? Because there's nothing I can do about it, and it's not a priority right now. I don't need to be worrying about it in my sleep. Then the next level is what I would call the amber things. They are things, or yellow. They are the things that I can't do anything about right now, and certainly not before I go to bed, but I would like them to be something that I spend time thinking about tomorrow. And then the rest of the things on the list will be hopefully relatively easy things that are, actually I could do something, I could put the bins out right now, okay? They're things that are relatively easy, I can do something about, and I'm going to do something about them before I go to sleep. And then they're off my list. So if I do happen to wake up worrying, I can just remind myself everything's dealt with and go back to sleep. I mean, I'm making that sound easy. It's not that simple, but the more you can get into that habit of getting your worry thoughts out of your head where they cause a problem and onto paper, you're much more likely to engage your problem-solving brain of how do I address those things. Okay, so that's one thing that I would do straight away if you're somebody that has those worry thoughts. Just set aside some time. The time shouldn't be just before you go to bed, right? You don't want to be worrying about those things before you go to bed. So maybe when you get home or, after dinner, whatever it might be, but, set aside some time to do that, if that's helpful.
Yeah. And what about then when you do wake up in the middle of the night? Is there any suggestions that you have there?
Absolutely. So let me do my 3 things that I think you need to be doing. I'm sorry, I've just got distracted by a comment saying I found the brain dump technique really useful. Excellent, especially after particularly stressful days, right? Writing down everything allowed me to empty my brain, get to sleep, didn't even need to review notes. Brilliant. Okay, it works. It does work. In terms of sleep, there are 3 things in general that control our sleep. The first thing is what's called our circadian rhythm, our internal body clock. Okay, and we have lots of circadian rhythms, but we have a sleep-wake circadian rhythm. And that tends to work on a 24-hour clock in line with the day. So in general, our brain loves us to be awake in the middle of the day and asleep in the middle of the night, right? In line with the sun being at its highest in the middle of the day and the sun being at its lowest in the middle of the night. Now, it does vary from person to person. It's not always, midday and midnight, because we do have night owls, early birds, that kind of stuff. And that means that your circadian rhythm is slightly different to somebody else's. Like your wake up time is 2:30, mine's 10 to 3. Somebody else's might be 5 o'clock in the morning, right? Somebody else's might be 11 o'clock at night. But whatever is your routine, your circadian rhythm needs to be regular. And if we assume that we've got a circadian rhythm that works in line with the 24-hour day and night clock, then what we would expect is 2 chemicals to work in conjunction with each other to make sure that I'm sleeping when I'm supposed to be asleep and awake when I'm supposed to be awake, right? So cortisol, our awake hormone, also our stress hormone, will start to rise early in the morning so that by midday it's at its highest. Melatonin, our sleep hormone, will start to decrease early in the morning so that by midday it's at its lowest. Therefore, I'm the least sleepy at midday and the most awake. Okay. Yeah. And then I can't do this, especially like on a thing, but then they'll cross, right? So then as we get over the zenith, my cortisol, my awake, will start to decrease as my melatonin, my sleep, starts to increase, so that by midnight my sleep hormone is at its highest and my awake hormone is at its lowest. So what we really want is the biggest differential between the two at the time you need to be most awake and most asleep, whatever time that is for you. Okay, but it needs to be regular. We need to have a routine. The only way it works is if we have a routine. And most of us don't have a routine. We you know, we'll get up at some point in the morning during the week. We change the times we get up at the weekends. We might have a lie-in on a Sunday. We might go to bed early one night because we feel tired, and then the next night we'll go to bed at a different time. And then I've got to stay up late to do my work, so I go to bed at a different time. And all I'm doing really is causing like a jet lag to my body every single day. My sleep has no idea what it's supposed to do. So routine is the number one thing you need to do if you want to have good quality sleep. Okay. Oh, yes. What do I think about press and snooze? No snoozing. Okay. So what that means is when you wake up, you get up. Okay. Yes. And you need to do that at the same time every single day, including holidays, including weekends. Okay.
Top tip, Kim, just move that alarm out of reach.
Yes. Well, in fact, don't even set it. Just set one alarm and get up. Because snoozing, we'll talk about snoozing in a second, and I realize I'm already running out of time. This is what happens because I get so passionate about this stuff. But routine is important. So it's really important that you set your getting up time and you set your going to bed time to be the same every single day and night. Now, there's a caveat in that if your getting up time is the thing that can't change because you've got to take the kids to school, or you've got to get to work, or whatever it might be, you've got clients to train, whatever it might be, then set that time and then work backwards by 8 hours, and that's the time you go to bed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But if you're somebody who can do what they like with their daytime, then, and actually going to bed is the thing that you want to fix, then set that and then work forward for the time that you need to get up 8 hours later or whatever it might be. Yeah. Okay, but set one of them and work backwards or forwards depending on what it might be, and make sure that that is the time that you get up. Okay, you can't change it. That's just when you get up, right? And you get up every single day at the same time, even if you're tired to start with, because what we're trying to do is train your brain. In the same way that you have a baby, right? When you have a baby, all animals know we're all born with the ability to sleep. Okay, but we have to be trained in when to sleep. Babies have no idea, right? They sleep, of course they sleep, right? Puppies sleep, kittens sleep all the time, okay? But we have to train them into a routine. So I'll come back to naps, it's a good question. We have to train them, right? And think about how you train a baby into sleeping. Yeah. Through the night, right? What you do is you set the bedtime, don't you? This is the bedtime. And then you have a routine that trains your brain into kind of going, oh, here's my bottle, and now I have a hug, and here's my story, and now it's sleep time.
So that's the foundation, is to reflect around that routine, isn't it?
Correct. Correct. And train your brain into getting a, I'm not advocating, okay, so somebody's asked about, training babies. I'm actually not a baby sleep specialist, so I wouldn't profess to know. That's not what I only work with adults, not babies, I'm afraid. So I can't comment on that one. But having a routine, think baby, right? Have a routine, go to bed at the same time, and eventually your baby brain will sleep through the night, right?
I like it, yeah.
Along with routine comes a second thing, which is only go to sleep when you are sleepy. Okay. Now, a lot of us go, I'm so tired, I'm going to go to bed. Tired generally means I've got no energy, stress has depleted my energy levels, but I might not be sleepy, right? Sleepy is that what you call for those of you that won't know, Grant and I have known each other a very long time, okay? And Grant calls the nodding dog, or I call the head bobbing, right? Which is doesn't really matter how stressed I am, doesn't matter how much I've been watching the television or looking at computer screens, I can't keep my eyes open, right? Then you're sleepy, okay? Now, feeling sleepy is really important for the second rule, right? Because when you're sleepy, your sleepiness will carry you all the way through the night until you wake up in the morning. If you go to bed before you're sleepy, you're much more likely to wake up in the middle of the night because you've gone to bed too early.
Oh, this is because I had an experiment recently because I felt like I wanted to experiment with bringing my bedtime forward a little bit, just grabbing an extra half an hour. But what I noticed was actually my sleep quality, although I was getting slightly more, my sleep quality started to reduce, and it was because I wasn't sleepy or as sleepy perhaps.
Yeah, and it's, for me, I call it sleep hunger, and it's a little bit like food hunger, right? So let's say I'm hungry during the day, I don't eat, so I'm not napping, right? In terms of sleep hunger, I know naps, right? I'm hungry. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten any food. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten any food. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten any food. At some point when I eat my food, I'm going to be so hungry that I'm going to eat proper food, right? Real food, and it's going to satisfy me and it's going to keep me satiated. Okay. If I eat before I'm really hungry, that's actually when we tend to go, what do I fancy? Right? And we'll eat donuts, whatever it might be, right? We'll eat something because actually it's not about being hungry then, right? And if I do eat something before I'm really hungry, when my dinner time comes, I'm not hungry. And I'm not satisfied with the food I've had because it's not satiating me. And sleep hunger is very, very similar. You kind of need to be at that sleep hunger state in order for your brain to kind of go, right, now I'm sleepy, and now this sleep will satiate me and carry me through all the way through the night. So if you are waking in the night, it could be because your circadian rhythm, your internal body clock, is not synced with your sleepiness. And the third thing is, when you get to bed, your brain needs to know what bed is for. Right? It's not very clever. It needs to know that your bed is actually for sleep. Because if as somebody's just said, if you are, what you might do is come home from work, kick off your shoes, have some dinner, fall asleep in front of the sofa, right? Well, your brain has learned that sofa's where you sleep.
Yeah.
So when you go up to bed, you're not sleepy because your brain has no idea what bed's for, but also you've just had a nap, you've snacked on your sleep hunger, so now you're not sleepy to carry you all the way through the brain. So it's really, really important that when you get to bed, your brain knows what bed's for. So to answer your question that you asked me ages ago, which is what happens when you wake up in the middle of the night, first thing is you need to train your brain into a routine, and you need to sync your sleepiness with bedtime. So that means if you've got a wake up time of 6 o'clock in the morning and you've set your bedtime for 10 o'clock at night, but you're not sleepy at 10 o'clock at night, then you don't go to bed. You go to bed when you're sleepy, but you still get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And eventually you'll be tired, right? Which is good, because as long as you don't snack at the sleepiness, the next night you'll feel sleepy at 10 o'clock. Okay. And your sleep will carry you through. So the third one then is, if you do wake up in the night, okay, until you've got your sleepiness and your routine synced, if you do wake up in the night, it's really important that you don't lie awake in bed for too long, because when you do, you're not letting your brain understand what bed's for. Now your bed thinks it's for waking up in the middle of the night and reading your phone. So then it's about, actually, then you need to get up and get out of bed and do something else. Okay? But only at the point that you think to yourself, this sleep isn't coming, right? If you're still sleepy, because I know you and I have had this conversation, it's like, I feel a bit sleepy, sleep will come, it's just going to take a little while, okay? Then I would engage your brain in some kind of activity that is really boring, so that it kind of goes, oh, now I'm tired. Okay. But not so boring that you've still got you've still got capacity to worry, right? You need it to be consuming, but not interesting. So my favorite thing to do when I do often wake up in that state is I play a little game in my head. I play the girl's name game or the boy's name game, where I think of girls' names that, so like Alice, for example, I might think of the name Alice. Alice starts with an A, ends in an E. So my next girl's name has to begin with an E. So I'll go, okay, Emily. Oh no, now I've got to think of a girl's name beginning with Y, right? And I'll play, and it's so dull, to be honest, but it engages my brain fully. It's why counting sheep doesn't work, because it's mind numbing, but it's not engaging enough to occupy your brain. But what we don't want to do is play a game that you kind of wake up in the middle of the night going, I can't wait to play the girl's name game. It's going to be so exciting. I'm going to wake myself up at 10 to 3 so I can play it. So something like that, or just counting backwards from 1,000 in sixes or something like that, right? Something that will engage your brain, but you actually have no vested interest in. I realise we're really we've got 4 minutes left on the call.
I've done really well, to be quite honest, knowing how much you enjoy talking and how much I enjoy talking. I think we've done it well. I think we've done brilliantly well, to be honest, Marcelle. Which is great.
But I guess those are the things, right? Which is routine is important. Going to bed when you're sleepy rather than tired is important. Only go to bed when you're sleepy. Delay going to bed time if you're not feeling sleepy, because otherwise you'll lay in bed awake. And make sure that you don't lie in bed awake, because that will just associate so no reading of phones, no watching televisions, all of that kind of stuff. The only caveat, which I would say, which you mentioned at the very, very beginning, is we're all different. So actually, if you are somebody that watches a bit of television in bed, reads in bed, and then falls asleep easily and stays awake all through the night, then no biggie. But if you are somebody that doesn't do that, then think about removing some of those things. Somebody said progressive muscle relaxation. That's great. That's a great one, right? Where you progressively relax your muscles. You think about relaxing your muscles, and of course, relaxing is really good because it's the antidote to stress. Count backwards from 1,000. I would count backwards from 1,000 in 27s, right? Do it. Don't make it so easy. Just make it a little bit more engaging if you're trying to get back to sleep quickly.
Okay, super. I'm conscious of time, so I just want to share a few bits, Marcelle. And if you keep your camera on, Marcelle, and any questions, again, just jump in. But okay, so what are the next steps? Again, we are really putting a call to action here for everybody that's attending this particular webinar today, to be very mindful around the 18th of March, and it's World Sleep Day on the 18th of March. And we'd like to really invite you to become sleep health advocates within your business, within your social circle of friends, to take more ownership of sleep. So we're going to invite you and call you to action and ask you, what are you going to do? What could you do to celebrate World Sleep Day? Now, we put up a couple of things here, like organise a physical event, like a workshop or something like that, distribute educational leaflets, materials, brainstorming ideas about sleep in the next team meeting that you have, perhaps even engage with a caffeine-free day as a bit of a promotion to bring awareness around sleep health within your organisation. NHS sleep self-assessments and those sorts of tools which you can share within your organisation to, again, raise awareness. And I know, Marcelle, your favourite one here, if you had to select something for a business to perhaps engage in to really help promote, is it right that I think you chose this one last time, didn't you, which was flexi working?
Yeah, I think flexi working, because we're all different, right? So there's no point in making somebody come to the office if you work in an office, or being on a call at 8 o'clock in the morning, if they're a night person, right? And their circadian rhythm isn't synced with getting up that early. So I think the more you can encourage people to work with their own circadian rhythm, the better. Partly added to that is not only kind of start finish times and flexi time, but also allowing people to manage their own work diaries. So I know personally, I have a stupid hour between 2 and 3. There is no point in getting me to do anything that requires brain power between 2 and 3 because it's just not going to happen. So allowing people to do, to figure out when is the best time for them to do tasks that require brain power, and when can they just do something that can be a little bit more mindless, like filing or answering emails or whatever it might be.
Yeah, super. I mean, I'm conscious of time as well, and I know that people have to jump off call. Perhaps they're jumping straight to another call. If you are needing to jump off the call, thank you so much again for your time, attention, and interaction today. I've launched a feedback poll. So before you exit today, before you jump off the call, just spend a few seconds just completing that feedback poll. That'll be very useful. And if Marcelle, if people are jumping off now, how might they contact you if they want to contact you about anything that we've spoken about today?
Oh, that's a great question. Sorry, I was trying to answer one of the questions on the Q&A. So absolutely feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. Shall I just type in the chat function?
Yeah, drop in links in there.
Let me send it to everyone, not just you and me, because you already know my details. So you can search for me on LinkedIn. I'm probably the only Marcelle Crinean that's on there, so I'm easy to link to. My email address, if anyone wants to email me with any questions that I didn't get a chance to answer, is marcelle@brainreframe.com. And my company is brainreframe.com, so you can find me at my website as well.
Super. Okay, and again, the call to action is, what are you going to do? What can you do to promote sleep awareness and greater sleep health within your circle of friends, individually and within the workplace on 18th of March. So you've got a couple of weeks perhaps to decipher what exactly it is that you're going to do that's going to really be a win for you to help raise awareness around sleep. Just a quick recap on what we spoke about in this particular session. Marcelle highlighted sleep routine and the importance of circadian rhythm. Marcelle also highlighted and identified sleep hunger. Notice, and this was fascinating to me, notice when you're feeling tired, but go to bed when you're feeling sleepy and understand those differences. And the sleep association, training your brain, your environment precedes your success as well, right? So Marcelle, is there anything you finally want to add just on that recap?
No, I think we've covered a lot of things. I mean, you mentioned sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is important, but for me, it goes to that sort of 80-20 rule, which is unless you're doing these three things first, things like screen time, yoga before bedtime, all of those things are important. Caffeine, I think you mentioned, eating before bed, they're important, but they're not going to have such a big impact unless you're doing these things. Yeah. So it's kind of like that 80-20 exercise diet rule, right? Which is you can't exercise yourself out of a bad diet. You can't sleep hygiene yourself out of a bad sleep routine.
Yeah, love it. Super. And, after every webinar that we deliver, after every workshop that we deliver here at Wellbeing People, we always encourage this self-reflection. And this is where that learning, that personal learning, those insights and that personal growth occurs. So what was the most useful thing for you today from attending this session and investing your precious time with us today? What did you find most useful for you? Was it the opportunity just to pause and reflect, or was there something that was mentioned today that really triggered a little bit of insight for you? Please share that in that chat function as well. And again, if you're interested in contacting Wellbeing People, you can do that. And you may have any inquiries, then please feel free to contact us at inquiries@wellbeingpeople.com. Okie dokie. So finally, I guess, key thing to reflect around is, thank you for sharing that, Tash, in the chat function. If you can share that to everybody, Tash, I think, is that the share? That's just to our LinkedIn groups, right? That would be great, but it's just come through to host and panelists. Marcelle, final word over to you. What do you suggest then? What's that key thing, key message you would like people to run with after this webinar?
What is the key message? That's a really good. So routine, think baby, right? Train yourself into sleeping well, think baby. And I guess somebody said, oh, you're in control mainly of what you do. Okay. So if you can make sleep a priority, reminding yourself always that, the more you sleep, the more you're emptying your stress buckets, and the more productive you're going to be the next day. If you allow yourself to, in fact, I'll stop there because we're over time, but yes. So think baby, and make sleep a priority, really, if you want to be more productive and have less stress in your life.
That's fabulous. Listen, Wellbeing People and myself would like to thank you, Marcelle, for sharing your experience and your knowledge with everybody that's attended today. We thank you so much for that. If you're having to jump off, we've overrun by 5 minutes, which I think is a real success, to be quite frank, Marcelle.
I don't know what you mean.
I think we should pat each other on the shoulder because we did all right, I think. Please feel free, if you haven't already completed that, or everyone has, which is wonderful. So thank you so much, everyone. Don't forget to tap into the recordings that you can watch. That's just been shared actually in the chat function. The recordings will be posted in our wellbeing communities, both on Facebook and in LinkedIn as well. And you can see the links for those up in the chat function. As you can see, our one of our directors has just dropped that in there for us, which is fabulous. So thank you so much. Outside of that, thank you everybody for your interaction, your thoughts and reflections today. Hopefully it's provoked a lot of thought and more importantly, a little bit more action as well. So I hope it's been enjoyable for everybody. Again, thank you so much, Marcelle. And we look forward to seeing you all again very shortly. But thank you, everybody. See you soon, Marcelle.
Take care.
Thanks.